The doorbell rang at 8 in the morning on a Sunday. I opened my front door and found two Massachusetts state troopers standing on my porch. Right behind them stood my 28-year-old sister, Vanessa. She wore a designer tracksuit from her honeymoon luggage and clutched a crumpled tissue. Her shoulders shook with loud, practiced sobs. My mother, Diane, stood beside her, stroking Vanessa's arm like she was a fragile child. My father, Thomas, stayed one step back. He stared at the porch floorboards, playing his usual role of the silent coward.
"That is her," Vanessa choked out. She raised a manicured finger and pointed it directly at my chest. "She stole our wedding gifts. She stole $30,000. My mother stepped forward. Her eyes narrowed into a glare that I had known my whole life. "Just hand over the cash, Aubrey. Hand it over right now so we do not have to ruin the family name. Do not make this harder than it has to be." I did not flinch. I did not cry. I am 31 years old and I work as a senior financial auditor in Boston. I spend 40 hours a week tracking down missing funds and catching corporate liars. I deal in spreadsheets, bank records, and hard facts. I do not deal in tantrums. The lead trooper adjusted his utility belt and looked at his notepad. "Aubrey Martin, do you own a silver SUV? Were you parked by the service loading dock at the Cape Cod estate last night?" I looked past my mother's sneer. I looked past my father's refusal to make eye contact. I looked straight at Vanessa. Her tears were flowing down her cheeks, but her eyes were cold, sharp, and calculating. She really thought she had me trapped. Before we go any further, take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to Grape Vengeance. Only do it if you know what it feels like to be the family scapegoat. And drop your age and the state you are watching from in the comments below. I want to know who is listening to this. Now let me tell you exactly how I handled my sister's trap. I did not panic. I did not scream back and beg them to believe me. I simply pulled the front door wide open and invited the two officers inside my home. I ignored my parents as they marched in behind the police, their shoes tracking dirt onto my hardwood floor. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a single USB drive. I held it up so the overhead light caught the metal. I did not take the wedding gifts, I told the trooper. My voice stayed steady and quiet, but I know who did. I walked over to the kitchen island, opened my laptop, and plugged the drive into the side port. Vanessa crossed her arms over her chest. She gave a tiny smirk behind the officer's back. She was so sure her plan was bulletproof. She had spent the entire morning planting the seed that her jealous, single older sister took the cash envelopes out of spite. She thought she had hidden her tracks. She did not know I had my own footage, and she did not know that the real thief was currently sitting outside in the passenger seat of her car, sweating through his shirt and waiting for the police to haul me away. The troopers leaned over my screen as the video file loaded on the desktop. But to understand how we reached this exact moment, you have to understand what happened 72 hours earlier in this very same apartment. That was when Vanessa first realized I was no longer willing to play the role of the family bank. To understand why my own blood relatives tried to send me to a state penitentiary, you have to look at the events that unfolded exactly 72 hours before the wedding. The conflict did not begin in that alleyway. It started on a quiet Thursday evening inside my Boston apartment. I was sitting at my kitchen island reviewing a risk assessment file for a corporate client. The intercom buzzed. Before I could even stand up, my front door swung open. Vanessa always kept the spare key I gave her for emergencies, though she only ever used it when she wanted something. She stormed into my living room wearing a cashmere sweater and carrying a leather tote bag. Her face was flushed red. She did not say hello. She did not ask how my day went. She marched straight to the granite counter and slapped a printed invoice down right over my spreadsheets. The paper was wrinkled where she had been gripping it. I looked down at the bold ink. It was a bill from her wedding venue. The total was $4,200. I looked up at her. She stood with her hands on her hips, her chin raised, expecting me to fix her problem, the way I always did. She pointed a manicured finger at the document. "The caterer is threatening to cancel the raw seafood bar," Vanessa said. Her voice was tight and demanding. "Derek told his parents we were having lobster tails and oysters. The venue says our final payment bounced. I need you to put this on your travel card tonight." I picked up the piece of paper. I did not sigh. I did not raise my voice. I read the line items aloud. Hand-shucked oysters, Maine lobster claws, custom ice sculptures.
I set the paper back down and slid it across the smooth stone counter toward her. "Then you should call Derek's parents and tell them you are serving chicken," I said. Vanessa blinked. Her mouth dropped open slightly. For a second, the room went entirely silent. The sound of the city traffic hummed outside my window. She stared at me as if I had just spoken a foreign language. "What did you just say?" she asked. "I said no," I replied, maintaining steady eye contact. "I am not paying for your wedding catering." "You make 6 figures, Aubrey?" she snapped, her tone rising into a sharp whine. "You just got a huge year-end bonus. Derek and I are stretched thin right now with the honeymoon costs. It is $4,000. You will not even notice it is gone." The entitlement radiating from her was suffocating. I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands. I told her that my finances were not a communal emergency fund for her luxury party. I told her to scale back her menu. Vanessa snatched the paper off the counter, her face twisted into a mask of pure resentment. She glared at me, turned on her heel, and marched out of my apartment. She slammed the front door so hard the framed pictures on my hallway wall rattled against the paint. I knew exactly what would happen next. I did not even bother returning to my work. I simply walked over to the coffee maker, poured myself a fresh cup, and waited. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up on the counter. The caller ID displayed my mother's name. The family machinery had been activated. I answered the call. My mother did not bother with a greeting either. "Your sister is crying in the parking lot of a grocery store," Diane said. Her voice was laced with engineered disappointment, the kind of disappointment designed to make me feel small. "She is having a panic attack 3 days before she walks down the aisle." I took a sip of my coffee. I asked her why Vanessa was crying. "Do not play stupid with me, Aubrey," my mother scolded. "You refused to help her with the catering bill. She is humiliated. Her future in-laws are expecting a certain level of class, and you are acting like a miser." I reminded my mother that Vanessa and Derek chose a venue they could not afford. I reminded her that they chose to invite 200 people. My mother lowered her voice into a sharp, cutting whisper. She pulled out her favorite weapon. She weaponized my independence against me. "You are 31 years old," she said. "You sit in a glass office all day. You have no husband. You have no children to feed. You live alone. What are you even saving your money for? Let your sister have her perfect day. Do not be selfish." I stood by the window and looked out at the city lights. I had spent my entire adult life acting as the family bank. I was the invisible workhorse. When I passed my licensing exams, my parents did not even buy me a greeting card. When I earned my promotion to senior auditor, my father merely nodded and asked if I was going to help pay for Vanessa's car repairs. Yet when Vanessa graduated, with a communications degree that took her 6 years to finish, my mother threw a catered backyard party and bought her a designer watch. Every achievement I earned was ignored. Every demand Vanessa made was funded. I spoke into the receiver, keeping my tone ice cold. "My money is mine. The answer remains no." There was a heavy pause on the line. I could hear my mother taking a deep, shaky breath. "You will regret this, Diane." Warned. She hung up the phone. The retaliation began the next morning. I was sitting at my desk at the firm when my phone chimed with a text message from Vanessa. It was a single, curt paragraph. She informed me that since I was unwilling to support her union financially, I clearly did not value her happiness. Therefore, she was revoking my +1. I would be attending the wedding alone. An hour later, an email arrived from her hired wedding planner. The subject line read, "Updated schedule." I opened the attachment. My name had been removed from the bridal party list. I was officially demoted from maid of honor to a standard guest. I was stripped of my speech. I was removed from the head table. I was banned from the morning hair and makeup session. Vanessa wanted a reaction. She was baiting a trap. She expected me to feel rejected. She expected me to drive to the suburbs, knock on her door, and hand over a shiny platinum credit card to buy my way back into the family inner circle. She wanted me to beg for my position beside her at the altar. I did not beg. I did not send a paragraph defending myself. I typed 2 words and hit send. Understood, thanks. That Friday evening, I walked into my bedroom and opened my closet. I bypassed the $300 satin bridesmaid gown I had already paid for months ago. I pushed it to the far end of the rack. Instead, I pulled out a tailored, structured navy blue sheath dress. It was the exact dress I wore to board meetings when I was preparing to uncover corporate fraud. It was armor. I decided right then that I would treat her wedding like a mandatory corporate obligation. I would arrive on time, I would observe the proceedings, I would eat the meal provided, and I would leave early. I accepted the downgrade with absolute silence, and I knew that my lack of a breakdown was driving her insane. She thrived on drama, and I was starving her of it. But Vanessa was far from done punishing me. Stripping my title was just a petty emotional jab. Her real problems still existed. The catering bills were piling up, the venue was demanding final checks, and Derek's finances were a hidden disaster waiting to collapse. My sister needed a scapegoat, and she needed someone to pay her debts. I thought setting a boundary would protect me. I did not realize that refusing to hand over my money willingly simply forced her to figure out a way to take it by force. The drive to the Cape Cod estate took 2 hours. I pulled my practical sedan through the towering wrought iron gates and parked near the edge of the gravel lot. The venue screamed of desperation masquerading as wealth. Ocean waves crashed against the distant cliffs, but the natural beauty was completely overshadowed by manufactured excess. Vanessa had turned a milestone event into a heavily funded theatrical production. Everywhere I looked, money was bleeding out. Ice sculptures, shaped like swans, were slowly melting near the entrance. 3 different videographers roamed the manicured lawns with heavy, shoulder-mounted cameras. A drone buzzed loudly overhead, capturing sweeping aerial shots of the guests arriving in their tuxedos and evening gowns. It was an exercise in extreme vanity. She did not want a marriage. She wanted a coronation. I checked in with the hostess and found my seating assignment, table 19. I walked across the sprawling ballroom, past the towering floral centerpieces and the gold-plated silverware. Table 19 was located in the furthest corner of the room, tucked right next to the swinging wooden doors of the catering kitchen. Every few minutes, a waiter would rush past, carrying trays of hot food, brushing against the back of my chair. It was a classic passive-aggressive maneuver. By placing me next to the staff entrance, Vanessa tried to remind me of my place. She wanted me hidden in the shadows while she bathed in the spotlight at the elevated head table. I took my seat smoothly, smoothing out the fabric of my navy blue dress. I did not complain. I did not ask the coordinator for a better view. I treated the space exactly like a waiting room before a difficult corporate audit. I kept my posture straight and observed the room. Ever since we were children, my sister viewed every social gathering as a battlefield where she had to conquer the attention of every person in the room. When I won a statewide math competition in the 7th grade, Vanessa threw a massive tantrum in the auditorium, claiming she felt dizzy. My parents rushed her to the hospital, leaving me to accept my academic award entirely alone. She craved all eyes on her at all times. Tonight she had 200 pairs of them, and she planned to use that audience to execute a public execution of my character. Dinner concluded with the clinking of crystal glasses. The room lights dimmed into a soft, romantic amber glow. The hired band stopped playing. The best man offered a brief, stumbling speech that nobody really listened to. Then the bride stood up. Vanessa grabbed the microphone with practiced grace. Her white lace gown sparkled under the heavy chandelier. She smiled, flashing her bleached teeth toward the primary camera operator, who stepped right into the center of the dance floor. She began by thanking our parents. Her voice trembled with perfectly timed emotion. She praised my mother and father for their endless support, wiping a single dry tear from the corner of her eye. The crowd offered a warm, collective sigh. My mother beamed with pride, practically glowing at the head table. My father nodded, raising his champagne flute. Then Vanessa shifted her weight. Her eyes scanned the dark room until they locked onto table 19. She signaled the lighting technician. A bright, blinding white spotlight suddenly swung across the ceiling and dropped directly onto my face. 200 heads turned in their chairs to stare at me. And to my older sister Aubrey, Vanessa cooed into the microphone. Her voice dripped with fake sugary sweetness. The room went dead silent. The drone hummed somewhere outside the massive glass windows. "Thank you for being here," she continued, her pitch rising cheerfully. "Even though we all know you are married to your spreadsheets. I mean, it must have been hard to tear yourself away from the office. Maybe one day you will look up from your audits long enough to find someone who can actually tolerate you." She offered a breathy little laugh. The ballroom erupted into awkward, forced chuckles. A few of Derek's fraternity brothers howled from the back bar. Older relatives whispered behind their cloth napkins. The women at the tables closest to me averted their gazes, pretending to inspect their dessert plates. I looked toward the head table. My mother was smiling widely, clearly amused by what she considered her youngest daughter's sharp wit. She saw nothing wrong with tearing another woman down for cheap entertainment. My father, true to his cowardly nature, stared down at his lap. He folded and unfolded a napkin, refusing to intervene, refusing to defend his eldest child. He let the abuse happen, just like he always did. The silence stretched. Everyone waited for my reaction. Vanessa stood at the altar of her own ego, holding the microphone, waiting for me to break. She wanted me to flush red with embarrassment. She wanted me to lower my head in shame. She wanted me to storm out of the double doors in tears so she could play the victim of a ruined reception. I refused to give her a single drop of satisfaction. I sat perfectly still under the harsh white spotlight. My face remained entirely unbothered, locked in a relaxed, neutral expression. I reached out slowly and picked up my crystal water glass. I raised it in the air toward the head table, offering a firm, sarcastic toast to her cruelty. I took a slow sip of ice water. I set the glass back down on the linen tablecloth without making a sound. Then, in front of the cameras, the guests, and my mocking mother, I casually lifted my left wrist. I checked the time on my silver watch, tapped the glass face once with my index finger, and let my arm drop. The message was clear. I was bored. The awkward laughter in the room instantly died. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The spotlight snapped off, plunging me back into the comfortable shadows. I watched Vanessa's face across the room. Her victorious smile cracked. The sugary facade melted away, leaving behind raw, unfiltered fury. Her jaw clenched so tight, the muscles in her neck strained against her diamond necklace. She slammed the microphone down onto the table with a loud electronic pop. My lack of a reaction drove her absolutely insane. That small pebble of conflict, my absolute refusal to be emotionally broken in public, fundamentally altered the trajectory of the entire night. Humiliation was no longer enough for her. She realized in that exact moment that she could not defeat me with petty insults or seating arrangements. My armor was too thick. She needed a weapon that would pierce my life permanently. She needed to destroy my reputation, my career, and my freedom in order to feel superior. She turned away from the crowd and aggressively grabbed her new husband by the elbow. That was when I noticed the groom for the first time all evening. Derek did not look like a man celebrating the happiest day of his life. His tuxedo jacket was unbuttoned, dark sweat stains soaked through the underarms of his expensive white dress shirt. He was pacing nervously near the darkened hallway that led to the restrooms, aggressively whispering into his cell phone. As a financial auditor, my entire career is built on detecting panic. I study human behavior when the numbers do not add up. Men who have nothing to hide do not sweat like that. Men who have nothing to hide do not look over their shoulders every 10 seconds. Derek looked exactly like a man who was drowning, and as I watched him quickly hang up the phone and wave his best man over into the shadows, I realized the fake smiles at the head table were covering up a massive hidden disaster. Something deeply wrong was happening behind the scenes of this luxury wedding, and they were about to drag me right into the center of it. I watched Derek from my shadowed corner at table 19. He thought no one was paying attention to him because every guest in the room was focused on Vanessa and her manufactured outrage. But I make my living watching people when they think nobody is looking. You learn a lot about a man by what he tries to project to the world. Derek was a regional sales manager for a mid-tier logistics firm. He drove a current-year leased luxury sedan and wore heavy gold watches that ticked just a little too loud to be authentic. My sister married him because he looked good on her social media feed. He provided the illusion of wealth she desperately craved, the kind of flashy status our middle-class upbringing never afforded her. She wanted a husband who looked like a millionaire, and Derek was more than happy to play the part on credit. Right now, the illusion was fracturing. He stood near the corridor leading to the restrooms. The lighting was poor, but I could see the rigid tension in his shoulders. He held his smartphone pressed tight against his ear. His free hand rubbed the back of his neck, leaving red marks on his skin. He paced back and forth in a tight 3-foot circle. He looked like a trapped animal looking for a cage door that did not exist. In my line of work, you learn to categorize panic. There is the mild anxiety of a junior accountant who misplaced a corporate receipt. Then there is the bone-deep terror of a man who cooked the books and knows the auditors just found the missing ledger. Derek exhibited the latter. He was a man drowning in dry air. I watched his mouth moving rapidly. He kept shaking his head, leaning his weight against the patterned wallpaper. He ran his fingers through his heavily styled hair, ruining the expensive haircut. Whatever the voice on the other end of the line was saying, it was not offering congratulations or well wishes. He shoved the phone into his tuxedo pocket and scanned the ballroom. His eyes darted past the packed dance floor, past the towering 5-tier cake table, until they locked onto his best man. The groomsman was laughing with a group of bridesmaids near the open bar, holding a fresh cocktail. Derek marched over and grabbed the man by the bicep. He pulled him away from the crowd with a sharp jerk. The jovial smile dropped from the groomsman's face the moment he saw Derek's expression. They retreated to the edge of the glass terrace doors. I kept my gaze fixed on them while I pretended to sip my ice water. Derek spoke in harsh, clipped sentences. The groomsman shook his head twice, looking alarmed. Derek stepped closer, invading his personal space, issuing a quiet but firm demand. Derek reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a silver key ring. He pressed the keys into the groomsman's palm and closed the other man's fingers over them. The best man swallowed hard. He nodded once, his face pale under the ballroom lights. He pocketed the keys, turned around, and slipped out the side door into the humid night air. Derek stood alone for a moment. He took a deep breath, adjusted his silk collar, and tried to smooth out the wrinkles in his jacket. He forced a wide plastic smile onto his face and walked back to join Vanessa at the head table. Something was incredibly wrong. The financial foundation of their perfect day was rotten, and the foul smell was starting to leak out into the open. I noted the bizarre interaction in my mind, filing it away the same way I document suspicious offshore transactions during a fraud investigation. An hour passed. The waiters cleared the dinner plates and brought out the dessert courses. The hired band returned to the stage playing a loud cover song that vibrated the wooden floorboards. I checked my watch again. I was calculating how early I could slip out the back door without triggering a dramatic scolding phone call from my mother. Before I could stand up, a shadow fell across my table. Vanessa stood there. The furious, venomous bride from the spotlight incident had vanished entirely. In her place was the sickly sweet, innocent sister who needed a simple favor. "Aubrey," she said. Her voice was breathy and light projecting for the benefit of the older relatives sitting at the next table. I looked up. I did not smile back. I waited for her to speak. "The event coordinator just told me we have a major problem," Vanessa continued. She rested her manicured hands on the back of the empty chair next to me. "We are doing the grand sparkler exit out the front doors at midnight. The photographer needs the main driveway entirely clear for the wide shots. You parked your car right near the fountain?" I had parked where the venue valet instructed me to park. I stated this fact plainly. "I know," she sighed, rolling her eyes, as if the working staff were highly incompetent. "But they need the space cleared out, immediately. Can you do me a favor and move your silver SUV around to the back? There is a service alleyway right next to the loading dock. You can leave it there for the rest of the night. It will not be in anyone's way. Please, Aubrey, do not ruin my exit photos." I looked past her shoulder. My mother was watching us from the edge of the dance floor. Her arms were crossed over her chest. She was waiting to see if I would cause another scene. She wanted me to argue so she could paint me as the bitter, uncooperative older sister who was trying to sabotage the wedding. I was tired. I was ready to go home to my quiet apartment and leave this exhausting family circus behind. Arguing over a parking spot would only give them the ammunition they craved. "Fine," I said. I grabbed my leather purse from the table. "Thank you so much," Vanessa beamed. She reached out and patted my shoulder, playing the part of the gracious bride. I walked out the front doors and retrieved my keys from the valet stand. The night air was cool against my skin. I got into my car and drove around the perimeter of the sprawling estate. The main driveway was brightly lit with decorative lanterns, but the rear of the building was stark and industrial. The service alley was dark, illuminated only by a single flickering yellow security light mounted on the brick wall. I pulled my silver SUV into the narrow space exactly where my sister told me to park. I turned off the engine. To my right were the heavy steel doors of the loading dock. To my left was a reinforced concrete wall.
I did not know it at the time, but the venue kept their secure gift vault in the manager's office just on the other side of those steel doors. I had walked right into it. I blindly followed the golden child's orders to avoid another screaming match with my mother. By parking in that specific, isolated spot, I provided them with the exact physical trap they were laying. They needed a scapegoat parked near the vault, and I delivered my vehicle right to the scene of their future crime. The real nightmare began the following morning when a phone call shattered the peace of my apartment and revealed the true depth of their betrayal. Sunday morning began with a deceptive layer of peace. I woke up early in my Boston apartment, eager to enjoy the silence. I poured ground Colombian beans into my coffee maker and listened to the machine brew. The rich aroma filled my kitchen, erasing the stale smell of the rented ballroom from the night before. I wore comfortable gray sweatpants and an oversized college sweater. I sat by the large glass window, watching the weekend joggers navigate the city sidewalks below. Quiet solitude. That was the only thing I wanted after enduring the theatrical circus of my sister walking down the aisle. My cell phone buzzed against the granite counter. The screen displayed my mother's contact name. I checked the digital clock on the stove. 8:15 in the morning. My mother never called this early unless someone died or someone needed a checkbook. I tapped the green accept button and pressed the speaker to my ear. Before I could even offer a greeting, a shrill scream tore through the receiver. "How could you do this to your own blood?" The volume was so piercing, the audio distorted into static. I pulled the device away from my face, wincing at the sharp noise. I took a slow breath and asked her what she was talking about. My mother did not lower her voice. She unleashed a barrage of venom, accusing me of ruining the most important day in our family history. I stood up, gripping the edge of the kitchen island. I demanded she speak clearly and state facts. "The gift vault," Diane shouted. Her voice shook with hysterical rage. "The secure manager office at the rear of the venue. Someone emptied it overnight. Over $30,000 in cash envelopes, personal checks, and small luxury gifts are gone. Everything is gone." I processed the numbers. 30 grand. My mind instantly flashed back to Derek sweating in the darkened hallway, frantically whispering into his cell phone. I told my mother they needed to contact the local authorities immediately. "We are calling the police," she snarled, "and we are sending them directly to your front door." I froze. My grip on the edge of the counter tightened until my knuckles turned pale. I asked her why the state police would come to my home. My mother spat the answer out like poison. "Because Vanessa saw you do it." They had already held a trial in my absence. During the chaotic morning aftermath, when the venue manager discovered the forced lock on the office door, Vanessa stepped right up to the plate. She took control of the narrative before anyone else could ask questions. She built a flawless timeline using the exact pieces she forced into place the night before. I left the reception at 10:30. The theft occurred sometime before midnight, and my silver SUV was parked directly next to the loading dock, mere feet away from the manager's office window. The specific parking spot she begged me to use. She was jealous Vanessa had told my parents over the breakfast table, playing the devastated bride. My mother repeated the accusation to me verbatim. "Vanessa said you were angry about her little joke during the dinner toast. She said you felt humiliated under the spotlight. You sneaked around the back building, broke into the secure vault, and took the envelopes to punish her for being happy." I listened to the accusation ring through the phone line. Growing up, if a window broke in our house, I took the blame. If Vanessa failed a high school spelling test, my parents said I distracted her from studying. They never required proof. They only required a convenient target so the golden child could remain flawless. Now that same toxic dynamic was escalating into a felony theft charge. They did not ask if I took the money. They did not want a proper investigation. They had their narrative, and it fit seamlessly into their lifelong habit of blaming me for every single inconvenience. The sound of rustling fabric echoed through the phone. My father took the receiver from my mother. His tone was cold, authoritative, and utterly disconnected from reality. Aubrey Thomas said, "Listen to me very carefully. Return the money right now. We will not press charges if you just bring the cash back to us today. We can sweep this unfortunate incident under the rug and protect your corporate career."
He framed his extortion as a favor. He thought he was playing the benevolent peacemaker, offering me a chance to avoid jail time. In reality, he was doing what he always did. He took the path of least resistance. Facing the truth that his brand new son-in-law might be a thief would require actual confrontation. Accusing his outcast daughter was easy. It required zero courage. I did not defend myself. Defending yourself implies that the other party is willing to listen to reason. My parents had already acted as judge and jury. "I do not have your money," I said. I tapped the red button and ended the call. I walked over to my front door and turned the deadbolt. The heavy metallic click echoed in the quiet hallway. I stepped back and stared at the wood paneling. The war had officially started. I walked back to the kitchen, poured my black coffee, and sat down at the table. I opened my laptop. I am a financial auditor. When ledgers lie, I follow the paper trail. Now people were lying, and I needed to follow the behavioral trail. I flipped the switch in my brain from sister to investigator. I pieced together the puzzle. Fact 1. Derek paced in the dark, exhibiting severe distress over a phone call. Fact 2. He handed a set of keys to his groomsmen in a hushed, urgent exchange. Fact 3. Vanessa forced me to move my vehicle to the exact location of the future heist, placing me alone at the scene. Fact 4. Vanessa used the public spotlight humiliation to establish a fake motive for my supposed crime. This was not a crime of opportunity. This was premeditated character assassination. They needed to pay off whatever heavy debt Derek owed, but they also needed a fall guy to take the blame. They chose me because I was financially stable, independent, and already cast as the family villain. They figured I would crumble under the pressure of a police investigation. They figured my parents would pressure me into paying the $30,000 out of my own pocket just to make the legal threats disappear and protect my accounting license. I drank my coffee. My pulse stayed steady. I did not shed a single tear. They made a fatal miscalculation. They assumed that because I remained quiet during their abuse, I was weak. They assumed I would fold under the weight of their combined guilt trip. But Vanessa did not know I kept my eyes open while she was busy playing for the cameras. And she did not know I had spoken to a specific vendor in that dark alleyway before I drove away. I picked up my cell phone. I needed to gather the one thing that ruins every liar: irrefutable evidence. I was going to let them spring their trap, and then I was going to use their own momentum to destroy them. 10 minutes after I ended the call with my father, my cell phone vibrated across the kitchen counter. A notification flashed on the glass screen. It was a group text message. Vanessa had added 45 different family members to a single chat thread. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends were all pulled into the digital conversation. I opened the thread and read the block of text. Vanessa played the role of the heartbroken bride with expert precision. She started by typing how she never thought her own flesh and blood could commit such a betrayal. She detailed the missing gift envelopes and the broken office lock. Then she dropped the hammer. She claimed the venue's security cameras in the loading dock alley mysteriously malfunctioned overnight. However, she wrote that a catering assistant taking a smoke break saw something suspicious. The assistant allegedly remembered seeing a woman wearing a dark blue dress loading heavy cardboard boxes into a silver SUV right around 10:30. I stared at the glowing screen. The sheer scale of the manipulation settled over me. It was a masterclass in deception. I sat down at my dining table and treated the text message like a fraudulent tax return. I dissected every single sentence. The layers of their setup finally made perfect sense. Vanessa had not just asked me to move my car to the rear alley as a favor. She orchestrated my precise location. She placed my vehicle feet away from the manager office window. She used her vicious dinner toast to establish a clear public motive. 200 guests witnessed her mock my career and my single status. 200 people saw me check my watch and refuse to react. She framed my silent departure as a bitter retreat. She used my 10:30 exit as her ironclad timeline. I realized with chilling clarity that this theft was not a spur-of-the-moment crime of opportunity. This was premeditated character assassination. Derek owed a dangerous amount of money. I saw the panic radiating off him in the hallway. He needed the cash from those gift envelopes, but they also needed an official police report. If they reported the cash stolen and pointed the finger at me, they could file a claim with their wedding insurance provider. They planned to double their profit.
They would keep the stolen cash to pay off Derek's debts, and they would collect the insurance payout to fund their lifestyle. They were using my ruined life as their bulletproof alibi. Vanessa always possessed a terrifying talent for rewriting reality. When we were teenagers, she totaled my father's sedan by backing into a brick mailbox. She crawled into the passenger seat, called our parents in tears, and blamed a hit-and-run driver. My parents believed her instantly, ignoring the red brick dust on the rear bumper. She knew how to cry on demand. She knew how to make authority figures view her as a helpless victim. Now she was upgrading her childhood lies into federal fraud. But Vanessa made one fatal miscalculation in her grand design. She assumed my quiet nature meant I was weak. She assumed I would crumble the moment our parents applied their heavy, suffocating pressure. She expected me to panic beg for forgiveness and write a check for 30 grand just to make the accusations vanish and protect my corporate reputation. Instead of breaking down, I picked up my phone. I closed the toxic group chat and opened my recent contacts list. I scrolled past my mother and father. I clicked on a number I had saved just a few weeks prior. I needed a specific artifact to destroy her lie, and I knew exactly where to find it. When I walked out to the dark service alley the night before, I was not alone. I had noticed a white delivery van parked directly across from my silver SUV. It belonged to Marcus. Marcus was an independent courier who regularly delivered documents to my accounting firm in Boston. We often chatted in the lobby while waiting for the receptionist. Last night, he was dropping off a late shipment of custom champagne flutes for the venue catering staff. I remembered something very specific about Marcus and his delivery van. His vehicle was his livelihood. He had invested in a high-definition 360-degree surveillance dashcam system. He ran it 24 hours a day to protect his cargo. I pressed the call button. The line rang 3 times before Marcus answered. I did not waste time with small talk. I asked him what time he arrived at the Cape Cod estate the previous night. He told me he pulled into the service alley right at 10 o'clock and stayed there dealing with a stubborn venue manager until midnight. I asked him if his cameras were rolling the entire time. He confirmed they were. I explained my situation using concise, emotionless terms. I told him my family was attempting to frame me for a felony theft that occurred in that exact alleyway between 10:30 and midnight. I told him the venue security cameras conveniently failed. Marcus did not hesitate. He told me to give him 5 minutes to pull the memory card and check the files. Those 5 minutes stretched on. I sat in my quiet kitchen staring at the blank wall. My phone vibrated again. Another text popped up in the family group chat. My Aunt Susan replied to Vanessa saying she was praying for the newlyweds and demanding I return the money. Uncle Dave chimed in next, calling me a disgrace to the family name. The poison was spreading fast. My reputation among my relatives was disintegrating by the second. I let them type. I let them build their false outrage. The higher they climbed on their moral high horse, the harder the fall would be. My phone rang. It was Marcus. I answered on the first ring. He told me he had the footage. He said the camera angle covered the entire loading dock, the manager office window, and my silver SUV. He saw me walk to my car at 10:20, get inside empty-handed, and drive away. The timestamp verified my exact movements. But more importantly, the camera kept recording long after my taillights faded into the dark. Marcus told me I was going to want to see what happened at 11:45. He said the footage was clear as day. He compressed the video files and emailed them directly to my secure work address. I thanked him, hung up the phone, and opened my laptop. I logged into my inbox. The attachment was sitting right there, a digital file containing the undeniable truth. I clicked download and saved the high-definition video to a portable USB drive. I slipped the small piece of metal into my coat pocket. As the progress bar hit 100%, a heavy knock echoed through my apartment. It was not a polite tap. It was a loud, authoritative pound on my front door. I stood up, smoothed out my gray sweater, and walked over to the peephole. I looked out into the hallway. 2 state troopers stood on my welcome mat, and standing right behind them, wearing a designer tracksuit and clutching a crumpled tissue, was my sister, Vanessa. My parents flanked her like armed guards, ready to watch the police place me in handcuffs. The trap was fully set, but they had no idea who was actually standing inside it. I turned the brass deadbolt and pulled the heavy wooden door inward. 2 uniformed Massachusetts state troopers filled the doorframe. Their radios crackled in the quiet hallway.
Right behind them stood my sister Vanessa. She still wore that expensive designer tracksuit she bought specifically for her honeymoon flight. She gripped a crumpled tissue in her right hand. Her chest heaved with loud, exaggerated sobs. My mother Diane stood shoulder to shoulder with her. She rubbed Vanessa's back in slow, soothing circles. My father Thomas stood one step behind them all. He stared at the woven welcome mat beneath his loafers. He refused to lift his chin. He refused to make eye contact with his eldest daughter. Ms. Aubrey Martin, the lead officer, asked. His name tag read Hayes. He held a small black notepad and a pen. I nodded and confirmed my identity. I kept my voice steady and low. I did not match the frantic, hysterical energy radiating from the hallway. We received a formal complaint regarding a grand larceny incident at the Cape Cod estate last night, Trooper Hayes explained. We have reason to believe you might have information regarding the missing funds. We would like to ask you a few questions. Before I could even open my mouth to respond, my mother pushed her way past the officer's shoulder. She stepped right onto the threshold of my apartment. Her eyes were hard and unforgiving. "Officers, she is the one who took it," Diane stated. Her voice rang clear and loud, echoing off the corridor walls. "She has always been deeply resentful of her younger sister. She has a documented history of vindictive behavior whenever Vanessa succeeds at anything." The air in my chest turned to ice. I stood there staring at the woman who raised me. I had endured decades of favoritism. I survived years of being treated like a secondary citizen in my own childhood home. I accepted being the financial safety net while they showered all their praise on the golden child. But this was a new, terrifying low. My own mother was standing in front of armed law enforcement, actively volunteering as a character witness for the prosecution. She was building a criminal profile of her own flesh and blood to secure Vanessa's manufactured narrative. She did not just want the money back. She wanted to ensure the police viewed me as a bitter, unstable suspect. She was willing to send me to a state penitentiary to protect the illusion of her perfect youngest daughter. I shifted my gaze to my father. Thomas Martin, the man who taught me how to ride a bike and helped me open my first savings account. He shifted his weight from his left foot to his right. He stared intently at the tips of his leather shoes. He heard his wife accuse me of a felony. He knew deep down that I lacked the capacity for theft. He knew I earned my own living through grueling corporate audits, yet he stayed silent. His cowardice was a thick, heavy blanket smothering any chance of justice. He chose the path of least resistance, just as he had done every single day of his adult life. Trooper Hayes held up a gloved hand, gently stepping in front of my mother to block her advance. He maintained his professional composure. "Ma'am, I need to speak directly to the suspect," he said firmly. He turned his attention back to me. "Ms. Martin, your vehicle matches the description of the car parked near the manager office at the time of the theft. Furthermore, multiple witnesses place you at the scene, holding a grudge over a public dispute during the reception toast." I looked at Vanessa. She peeked out from behind my mother's shoulder. Her fake tears continued to stream down her cheeks, but the corners of her mouth twitched. She was fighting the urge to smile. She thought she possessed the upper hand. She believed her web of lies was impenetrable. "Are you willing to consent to a search of your vehicle and your apartment?" Trooper Hayes asked. He rested his hand on his duty belt. "We can do this the easy way, or we can go secure a warrant." I stepped back and swung the door wide open. "You do not need a warrant," I replied. My tone remained frigid and polite. "You are welcome to search every inch of my property. I will hand you the keys to my car right now." My mother let out a loud, dramatic scoff. She clearly thought my compliance was a desperate bluff. She marched into my living room, her heels clicking aggressively against the hardwood floor. Vanessa followed close behind, wiping her nose, playing the traumatized victim entering the den of the villain. My father trailed at the back of the pack, closing the door behind him, like a man walking into a funeral home. The two troopers stepped inside. They began visually scanning my clean, organized living space. However, I continued addressing Trooper Hayes directly. "Before you waste your valuable time tearing apart my closets and ripping up my car seats, you need to see this."
I turned my back on the police and my family. I walked calmly toward the kitchen island. I did not rush. I did not display an ounce of fear. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the silver USB drive containing Marcus's dashcam files. I plugged the metal drive into the side port of my laptop. The silence in the room became deafening. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant siren of an ambulance down the street. Vanessa stopped crying. Her practiced sobs ceased instantly, as if someone flipped a switch on her vocal cords. She crossed her arms tightly over her chest. She stood near my velvet sofa, jutting her chin out in a display of pure arrogance. She was so confident that whatever I held on that computer was a pathetic, desperate lie. After all, she had personally confirmed with the venue manager that the loading dock security cameras were broken. She knew the estate had blind spots. She walked the perimeter the day before the wedding to ensure no lenses pointed toward that specific service alley. She crafted her entire scheme around that lack of surveillance. What she did not know was that I did not need the venue cameras. I did not rely on the estate security system. I tapped the trackpad on my laptop. The digital folder popped open on the high-definition screen. I clicked on the compressed video file Marcus sent me just 20 minutes prior. The media player launched. The video buffered for a fraction of a second before the crisp, time-stamped footage filled the display. I had secured a piece of evidence that existed completely outside of Vanessa's rigid control. She had orchestrated the location, the timeline, and the motive, but she failed to account for a random, hard-working delivery driver who protected his cargo with a 360-degree lens. I stepped aside, leaving the laptop screen angled toward the center of the room. "Trooper," I said, pointing at the glowing monitor, "I suggest you watch the timestamp very closely." The two officers stepped up to the granite counter. My parents leaned in behind them. Vanessa stayed rooted to her spot near the sofa, her arrogant smirk beginning to falter as the bright headlights of the delivery van illuminated the screen. She thought she had buried me alive. She was about to discover that she had dug her own grave and the shovel was currently resting in her husband's hands. Let me pause the tape and rewind the clock to 10:15 on Saturday night. I had just walked out of the suffocating ballroom, leaving behind the fake smiles, the melting ice sculptures, and my sister playing the victim under a harsh white spotlight. The night air hit my face sharp and cold, clearing the heavy scent of expensive floral arrangements from my lungs. I followed the valet instructions and navigated the perimeter of the sprawling estate. I walked toward the designated service alley where Vanessa had ordered me to park my silver SUV. The path was poorly lit. Gravel crunched under my heels. The music from the reception faded into a dull, thumping bass line. As I rounded the corner of the brick building, the yellow security light flickered above the loading dock. My vehicle sat right where I left it, but it was not the only vehicle occupying the narrow concrete corridor. A pristine white delivery van was parked diagonally across from my front bumper. The engine idled quietly, emitting a faint hum. The side panel displayed the painted logo of an independent courier service operating out of downtown Boston. I recognized that logo immediately. I also recognized the man standing near the open back doors, holding a clipboard and securing a heavy cardboard box. It was Marcus. He was a 35-year-old small business owner who handled high-priority corporate deliveries for my accounting firm. We shared the same grueling morning schedule. We stood in the same line at the corner coffee shop near my office building every Tuesday and Thursday. He drank black drip coffee. I ordered an Americano. We bonded over the shared exhaustion of building a career from the ground up without relying on family handouts. "Hey!" Aubrey Marcus called out, raising a gloved hand. He looked surprised to see me shivering in a formal navy dress next to a commercial loading dock. I walked over and offered a genuine smile, the first one I had produced all evening. I asked him what he was doing at a Cape Cod estate on a Saturday night. Marcus shook his head and tapped his metal clipboard. He explained he was dropping off an emergency shipment of custom-engraved champagne flutes. The venue staff apparently shattered 24 glasses during the cocktail hour setup. The wedding planner paid a premium fee to have replacements couriered directly from the city before the midnight toast. I told him the bride was my sister. Marcus offered his condolences, remembering the stories I had shared over morning coffee regarding my toxic family dynamic. We shared a brief, quiet laugh in the dark alleyway. I pulled my car keys from my leather purse. Before I got into my driver's seat, I noticed a blinking red light mounted near the rearview mirror of his van.
I stepped closer, squinting through the windshield. Marcus caught my gaze. He patted the hood of his vehicle with undeniable pride. He explained his new hardware setup. He ran a high-end, 360-degree surveillance dashcam system. His business depended on securing valuable cargo, and he did not take chances with blind spots. The camera recorded constantly, storing high-definition footage on a hidden hard drive secured under the dashboard. He boasted that a bird could not land on his roof without him capturing the exact second it happened. I complimented his dedication to security. I waved goodbye, climbed into my car, and pulled out of the alleyway at exactly 10:20. I drove home, assuming the worst part of the wedding weekend was finally over. Fast forward to Sunday morning. My mother was screaming through the phone receiver, leveling a felony theft accusation against me. Vanessa was building a digital pyre in the family group chat, feeding lies to 45 different relatives. She claimed the venue cameras conveniently failed. She claimed a catering assistant saw my navy dress near the vault. She constructed a flawless timeline using my early departure. The moment my mother hung up, the memory of that blinking red light flashed in my mind. Vanessa thought she controlled the environment. She walked the venue perimeter and verified the security flaws. She knew the loading dock cameras were dead. She built her entire fraudulent narrative on that single point of failure. She assumed my silver car sat in an unmonitored vacuum. She did not account for a hardworking courier who protected his livelihood with a wide-angle lens. While my aunt and uncle typed out furious messages condemning my character, I dialed Marcus. He answered after the third ring. The background noise sounded like a busy diner. I apologized for interrupting his Sunday breakfast and quickly laid out the situation. I did not let emotion crack my voice. I spoke in the clear, precise terms of a financial investigator. I told him my sister was attempting to frame me for stealing $30,000 from a secure office vault. I told him the theft supposedly happened in the exact alleyway where we spoke shortly after I drove away. I told him the police were likely going to knock on my door very soon. Marcus did not ask unnecessary questions. He did not doubt my innocence for a single second. He understood the severity of false allegations. He told me to hold the line while he booted up his laptop in the diner booth. I listened to the sound of his fingers flying across the keyboard. Every second felt thick and heavy. The silence in my apartment pressed against my eardrums. If his camera angle missed the manager office window, I was going to have to fight a circumstantial war against a family that excelled at playing the victim. "I got it," Marcus said. His tone was sharp and highly focused. He read the timestamp aloud, 10:15. He described the footage. He saw himself standing near the van. He saw me wearing the navy dress. He saw us talking under the yellow security light. "Fast forward it," I instructed, pacing the length of my kitchen floor. Marcus scrubbed through the timeline. He confirmed my silver SUV pulling out of the alley at exactly 10:20. The camera captured my empty hands opening the car door. It captured my license plate leaving the premises. My alibi was secured. I had irrefutable proof that I exited the property without touching a single cardboard box or gift envelope. But an alibi was not enough. I did not just want to clear my name. I needed to expose the real thieves. I needed the final puzzle piece to turn their trap back onto them. I asked Marcus how long he remained parked in that alley after I left. He let out a heavy sigh over the phone line. He explained that the venue manager was nowhere to be found when he tried to deliver the champagne flutes. Marcus had to wait around the loading dock guarding his van for nearly 2 hours before someone finally signed the manifest. His camera kept recording the entire time, pointing directly at the steel doors of the vault. I told him to watch the footage between 11:30 and midnight. The line went silent again. I stopped pacing. I gripped the edge of the granite island. The digital clock on the stove flipped to 9:15. My family was likely rallying the troops preparing to march on my home alongside the state troopers. I needed the ammunition before they arrived. A sharp gasp came through the speaker. Aubrey Marcus whispered, his voice laced with pure shock. "You are not going to believe this." He described the scene unfolding on his screen. The side door of the venue propped open. A man stepped out into the harsh glare of the dashcam headlights. It was not a woman in a blue dress. I knew exactly who it was, but hearing the confirmation sent a surge of cold adrenaline through my veins. The trap was ready. Marcus did not just describe the suspect. He described the suspect holding a heavy box overflowing with white envelopes. He described a second man joining the first. He detailed them bypassing my empty parking spot and loading the stolen goods into the trunk of a rented sedan hidden in the shadows. The camera caught the faces, the transfer, and the license plate. "Send me the raw files right now," I demanded. Marcus compressed the video and emailed the time-stamped files to my secure server. He promised to keep the originals safe and offered to testify if the police needed a sworn statement. I thanked him for his integrity and ended the call. I downloaded the video onto a portable USB drive. The transfer took 90 seconds. I held the small piece of metal in my palm. It felt heavy. It was not just a storage device, it was a digital guillotine. My family had spent 3 decades manipulating reality to suit their needs. They spun their failures into triumphs and turned my successes into dust. They wielded guilt and shame like weapons, confident that no one would ever challenge their twisted version of events. They thought they could sweep this felony under the rug, destroy my career, and walk away richer. But you cannot manipulate a high-definition recording. You cannot argue with a digital timestamp. The evidence was irrefutable. It existed outside their sphere of influence. I slipped the drive into my coat pocket just as the heavy pounding echoed against my front door. The police had arrived. My parents had arrived. Vanessa had arrived, armed with her fake tears and her stolen victimhood. They wanted a confrontation. They wanted me to surrender. I walked toward the entryway, ready to burn their empire of lies straight to the ground. I hit the play button on my laptop trackpad. The media player launched, filling the high-definition screen with the recorded footage. Trooper Hayes stepped forward and leaned his heavy forearms against my granite kitchen island. His partner moved in right beside him, pulling out a fresh notepad. My parents stepped up to the opposite side of the counter, squinting at the bright display. Vanessa remained standing near the velvet sofa, crossing her arms, projecting an aura of bored confidence. She still believed I was bluffing. The video started playing. The digital timestamp glowing in the bottom right corner of the footage read 11:40 p.m. The screen showed the dark service alley behind the Cape Cod estate. The yellow security light flickered against the brick wall. The space directly in front of the venue loading dock was entirely empty. There was no silver vehicle parked there. My mother leaned closer to the monitor. Diane always possessed an intense need to inspect every tiny detail of my life. Growing up, she scrutinized my report cards, my bank statements, and my apartment leases, always searching for a flaw she could criticize. She built her entire identity around managing appearances and pointing out the shortcomings of others. Now she was scrutinizing a video she truly believed would send her eldest daughter to a state penitentiary. "Keep your eyes on the heavy steel door on the right side of the frame," I instructed the room. My voice remained calm and even. The digital clock on the footage ticked forward. 11:41, 11:42, 11:43. The alley remained quiet and still. Then the timestamp hit 11:45. A loud metallic clank echoed from the laptop speakers. The heavy steel side door of the venue pushed outward. A tall figure stepped through the doorframe and out into the cool night air. My father, Thomas, crossed his arms over his chest. He expected to see a woman wearing a navy blue sheath dress sneaking around in the shadows. He expected to see his lifelong scapegoat caught in the act. Instead, the figure on the screen wore black formal trousers and a crisp white dress shirt. An untied black silk bow tie hung loosely around the collar. The man stepped directly into the bright, unforgiving glare of the delivery van headlights. It was not a bitter older sister seeking revenge. It was a man in a tuxedo. It was Derek. The high-resolution camera captured every single detail of his panicked state. His face was slick with sweat. His eyes darted frantically left and right, scanning the alleyway for witnesses. His chest heaved with heavy, irregular breaths. He carried a large commercial cardboard box pressed tightly against his stomach. The top flaps of the box were bent backward. Hundreds of thick white greeting card envelopes spilled over the cardboard edges. Small velvet jewelry boxes and wrapped luxury gifts rested precariously on top of the towering pile. He struggled to balance the heavy load, his polished leather shoes slipping slightly on the damp pavement. A second later, another figure emerged from the open venue door. It was the best man.
He held a smaller canvas tote bag overflowing with more stolen envelopes. He jogged up right behind Derek, nervously checking his cell phone. Together, the two men walked directly through the illuminated alleyway. They bypassed the empty parking spot where my silver SUV had been parked just an hour prior. They walked straight past the exact location Vanessa had claimed to see me. They approached a dark rented sedan parked in the deep shadows near the venue dumpsters. The best man pulled out the silver keyring Derek had handed him earlier in the evening. He clicked the unlock button. The trunk of the sedan popped open. Derek hoisted the heavy cardboard box and dumped the entire contents into the trunk. The camera angle was flawless. It captured the exact transfer of the stolen goods. It captured the frantic, guilty expressions on their faces. It captured the clear, illuminated digits of the rental car license plate. I reached out and tapped the spacebar on my keyboard. The video paused instantly. I froze the frame right on Derek's terrified, sweating face as he looked back toward the venue door one last time. The image burned bright against the screen, serving as an undeniable digital monument to his guilt. The silence inside my apartment became suffocating. The ambient hum of the refrigerator seemed to vanish. No one breathed, no one moved. The air felt thick and heavy. My mother opened her mouth, but her vocal cords failed to produce a single sound. Her jaw hung slack. The vibrant color drained entirely from her face, leaving her pale and trembling. She stared at the frozen image of her brand-new son-in-law clutching her daughter's stolen wedding funds. Her entire worldview, her precious illusion of the perfect family, fractured and shattered right in front of her eyes. My father gasped loudly. It was a sharp, painful intake of air. He gripped the back of a wooden kitchen chair for physical support. His knuckles turned white against the timber. His knees visibly buckled under the crushing weight of the revelation. The man he had welcomed into his family, the man he had proudly toasted just hours ago, was a common thief. I turned my head and looked directly into my mother's wide, terrified eyes. "That is your son-in-law," I said softly. I did not yell. I did not gloat. I delivered the fact with surgical, emotionless precision. The truth did not need volume to be devastating. I slowly turned my gaze toward the living room. Vanessa stood perfectly still near the velvet sofa. Her practiced, theatrical tears stopped instantly. The crumpled tissue slipped from her manicured fingers and fluttered silently to the hardwood floor. Her eyes were locked onto the laptop screen, wide and unblinking. The arrogant smirk she wore just minutes earlier was wiped away, replaced by a hollow, vacant stare. Trooper Hayes broke the silence. He stood up straight, pushing himself away from my kitchen island. He adjusted his heavy-duty belt. The polite, accommodating customer service tone he had used upon entering my home vanished entirely. His posture shifted into a rigid, commanding law enforcement stance. He unclipped the radio microphone attached to his shoulder epaulette. "Ma'am," the officer said, directing his stern voice straight at Vanessa. Vanessa jumped slightly, startled by the sudden noise. She looked at the uniformed trooper, her chest rising and falling with rapid, shallow breaths. "Where is your husband right now?" Trooper Hayes demanded. His tone was harsh and uncompromising. Vanessa swallowed hard. She pointed a trembling finger toward the front window of my apartment. "He is outside," she stammered, her voice cracking into a high-pitched whisper. "He is sitting in the passenger seat of my car." Trooper Hayes exchanged a swift, knowing look with his partner. They both rested their hands over their holstered weapons. They turned toward my front door, preparing to walk down the hallway and apprehend a fleeing felon sitting right in my driveway. But the story was far from over. Catching the physical thief was only half the battle. The police knew who took the envelopes, but they did not know the underlying motive driving the crime. They did not know the dark financial secrets hiding behind Derek's leased luxury vehicles and fake designer watches. As the officers moved toward the exit, I reached into my leather briefcase. I was about to drop the second truth on my family, revealing the terrifying debt that forced the golden groom to rob his own wedding vault. Trooper Hayes reached for the brass doorknob. His partner unclipped a heavy black flashlight from his belt, preparing to approach the suspect vehicle currently parked in my driveway. I cleared my throat loudly. I told the law enforcement officers to wait just one more minute. Knowing the identity of the person who emptied the secure venue vault was important, but understanding the exact motivation behind the crime would make their upcoming interrogation significantly easier. I turned away from the kitchen island and walked over to a leather work briefcase, resting on my armchair.
I am a senior financial investigator. My daily routine involves tracking hidden assets, exposing corporate embezzlement, and finding funds that people desperately try to conceal. When Marcus called me earlier that morning to confirm his dashcam captured the real thief, I did not just sit around my apartment sipping coffee. I used that hour productively. I booted up my secure terminal and accessed a series of public financial databases. I ran a comprehensive background check on my brand new brother-in-law. I pulled a thick manila envelope from my bag. I tossed it onto the granite counter. The heavy paper slapped against the stone surface. Trooper Hayes paused his exit. He stepped back toward the island and opened the cardboard cover. My parents crowded around his elbows, their eyes scanning the highlighted, printed records inside. Derek did not steal those envelopes for a thrill, I explained to the quiet room. He took those funds because he is drowning. He presents himself to the world as a successful regional manager. He drives a leased luxury sedan and wears tailored suits, but his public image is a total fabrication. The records inside that folder outline a desperate, sinking man. I listed the numbers aloud, keeping my tone sharp and clinical. Derek carried $45,000 in outstanding gambling arrears. He owed money to offshore betting syndicates and local bookmakers. The State Revenue Department filed 2 separate tax liens against his wages last year. Every single credit card tied to his Social Security number was maxed out to the final limit. He could not even secure a small personal loan from a traditional bank if his life depended on it. He promised his creditors a giant payday this weekend, I continued. The wedding gifts were his only way out. He literally robbed his own reception to save his kneecaps from being broken. He orchestrated a felony, stole cash from his own friends, and tried to frame the only financially stable person in this family to cover his tracks. My mother stumbled backward. Her shoulders hit the oak kitchen cabinets with a dull thud. Her pristine image of the perfect daughter marrying the perfect wealthy gentleman evaporated into thin air. Diane always judged everyone by their bank accounts. She measured human worth by zip codes and designer labels. She spent decades making me feel inadequate because I chose a quiet, pragmatic career over a flashy lifestyle. Now she realized she had proudly hosted a 200-guest party to celebrate a union with a degenerate gambler. The social consequences hit her instantly. She covered her mouth with trembling fingers. She knew the country club ladies would whisper about this disaster during Sunday brunch for the next 10 years. Her social currency was officially bankrupt. She had enabled a monster, and the monster bit her in front of the police. My father groaned. It was a pathetic, weak sound. He dropped his chin to his chest and stared at the floor. The shame was suffocating him. He realized that by Monday morning, his entire extended family would know his chosen son-in-law was a common thief. The man he had welcomed into his home, the man he had proudly toasted just hours ago, viewed their family as an easy mark. My parents expected a fairy tale. Instead, they funded a criminal enterprise. Trooper Hayes closed the manila cover. He tapped the folder against the granite counter and thanked me for the detailed intelligence. He told his partner they had more than enough probable cause to detain the suspect outside. They turned to leave again, their boots heavy against my hardwood floor. But as I watched the officers march toward the hallway, I noticed something deeply wrong with my sister. I shifted my gaze to Vanessa. She was standing frozen near the velvet sofa. A normal bride, upon discovering her groom was a broke criminal who just stole their future, would scream. She would cry genuine tears of heartbreak. She would demand answers or collapse from the shock of the betrayal. Vanessa was not crying anymore. Her theatrical sobs had vanished. Her face was drained of blood, leaving her skin a pale, sickly gray. Her eyes were wide, fixed intensely on the financial records resting on my counter. Her chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. Her hands trembled against her thighs. She did not look betrayed. Shock involved surprise. Her physical reaction displayed something much darker. She displayed pure, unadulterated fear. She looked like a cornered animal realizing the hunters just found the scent. I study human behavior for a living. I read micro-expressions during hostile audits. The way she stared at the door, the way she chewed on her lower lip, the way her eyes darted nervously toward my laptop screen. It all painted a very clear, very damning picture. The conflict was far from over.
because right then, looking at her pale, trembling lips, I realized Vanessa already knew about the debts. She was not a clueless victim who accidentally married a con artist. She was terrified because the police were walking out to question a man who knew all of her secrets. And I was about to uncover the final piece of evidence proving my sister was a full co-conspirator in her own wedding heist. Through the front window of my Boston apartment, I watched the two state troopers march down the paved walkway. They moved with heavy, deliberate steps, their thumbs resting casually near their utility belts. The morning sun reflected off their silver badges. Out in the driveway, Derek sat in the passenger side of Vanessa's imported luxury sedan. He had the window rolled down, his elbow resting on the doorframe. He looked relaxed. He probably thought the police were inside reading me my Miranda rights. He expected to see me escorted out in handcuffs, taking the fall for his criminal disaster. Trooper Hayes approached the passenger door and tapped on the glass. Derek flashed a winning corporate smile, the same fake grin he used to charm my parents during Sunday dinners. The officer did not smile back. Hayes opened the car door and ordered my brother-in-law to step out onto the concrete. Even through the thick glass of my living room window, I could see the exact second Derek realized his scheme had imploded. The trooper pulled out his small black notepad. He gestured toward my apartment. I watched his lips move. I knew exactly what he was saying. He mentioned the timestamp. He mentioned the dashcam footage. He mentioned the rented sedan and the heavy cardboard box overflowing with envelopes. Derek folded like a cheap cardboard box left out in the rain. His corporate arrogance evaporated. His knees actually buckled, forcing him to lean against the side of the car for physical support. He shook his head frantically. His hands flew up into the air in a gesture of frantic surrender. Then he did exactly what cowards do when cornered. He turned on his partner. Derek raised his arm and pointed a shaking finger directly at my living room window. He was not pointing at me. He was pointing at his brand new wife. I turned away from the window and looked at Vanessa. She had been watching the exact same scene unfold from the center of my living room. She saw Derek point. She knew the police were about to storm back inside and ask her a very different set of questions. Her survival instincts kicked in instantly. Vanessa executed a flawless pivot. The pale, terrified expression vanished, replaced immediately by a mask of profound, agonizing heartbreak. She let out a loud, piercing wail. She threw herself forward, wrapping her arms tightly around my mother's neck. I did not know Vanessa sobbed, burying her face into our mother's shoulder. "Mom, I swear to you, I had no idea. He lied to me. He told me he saw Aubrey near the loading dock. He told me Aubrey took the gifts." Her performance was Oscar-worthy. She forced her breathing to become ragged and uneven. She clutched the fabric of my mother's blouse like a drowning sailor clinging to a life raft. I believed him because I was just so hurt, Vanessa cried, her voice muffled against the fabric. I was a heartbroken bride. My special day was ruined. I was vulnerable, and he took advantage of my grief. I really thought Aubrey wanted to punish me for the toast. He used my own insecurities against me. I stood by the kitchen island watching the theatrical display unfold. My father stood near the sofa looking lost and confused, rubbing his temples as if trying to massage away a severe migraine. But my mother sprang into action. Diane Martin thrived in moments of crisis, as long as she could play the savior to her favorite child. My mother wrapped her arms around Vanessa, shushing her gently. She stroked Vanessa's highlighted hair, rocking her back and forth, right in the middle of my living room. "It is okay, sweetie," my mother cooed, her voice dripping with misplaced sympathy. "You are a victim here. We are all victims. Derek is a sociopath. He manipulated you. He manipulated this entire family. You cannot blame yourself for trusting the man you just married." I watched them rewrite the script in real time. It was a fascinating, sickening process. Within 60 seconds, Vanessa transformed from a smug accuser into a tragic, betrayed heroine. My mother was actively helping her build a new defensive wall. They were preparing to face the fallout by casting Vanessa as the ultimate casualty of Derek's financial ruin. This was the dynamic I grew up with. When Vanessa was 16, she stole $300 from my father's desk drawer to buy concert tickets. When my parents noticed the missing cash, Vanessa immediately blamed a neighbor who had visited earlier that day. When the neighbor proved they were out of town, Vanessa broke down in tears, claiming peer pressure and severe anxiety drove her to steal.
My parents did not ground her. They did not demand she repay the money. They bought her a therapy dog and took her out for ice cream to soothe her fragile nerves. They always found a way to excuse her behavior. They always found a way to make her the victim of circumstance, and they fully expected me to fall in line. My mother looked up from Vanessa's sobbing form. She locked eyes with me. Her expression demanded compliance. She expected me to walk over, place a comforting hand on my sister's shoulder, and offer my unconditional forgiveness. She wanted me to help them heal the family unit, now that the bad man was caught outside. They wanted to sweep the fact that they tried to send me to prison straight under the rug. "Aubrey," my mother said, her tone shifting into a gentle, pleading register, "look at your sister. She is devastated. Her marriage is over before it even began. She needs our support right now. We need to stand together as a family and deal with this nightmare." I did not move a single muscle. I did not offer a comforting smile. I simply stared at the two women standing in my home, recognizing them for exactly who they were. My mother interpreted my silence as lingering resentment. She sighed, a long, dramatic exhale designed to make me feel unreasonable. "I know you are upset about the police coming here," Diane continued, attempting to smooth over the attempted felony frame job like it was a minor scheduling conflict. "But you have to understand Vanessa's perspective. She was grieving. Derek fed her poison, and she was too emotionally exhausted to see the truth. We all make mistakes under pressure. You have your proof now. You are safe. Can we please just focus on helping your sister survive this trauma?" I looked at Vanessa. She peeked out from behind our mother's shoulder. Her eyes were red, but there were no actual tears falling down her cheeks. She was waiting for me to surrender. She was waiting for me to accept my role as the supportive background character in her tragedy. 10 years ago, I might have caved. I might have swallowed my pride, walked over and offered a hug. I might have let them rewrite history to keep the peace. But I was not the family scapegoat anymore. I was a 31-year-old woman who had just spent the last hour meticulously dismantling a criminal conspiracy designed to destroy my life. I was not going to let Vanessa walk away wearing a crown of thorns. She was not a victim. She was the architect. I took a slow, deliberate step toward the kitchen island. I placed my hands flat against the cool granite surface. My laptop screen was still glowing, currently paused on the image of Derek stuffing envelopes into the rental car trunk. "You are right about one thing, Mom," I said, keeping my voice dangerously quiet. The room fell silent. Vanessa stopped her fake sobbing to listen. "Derek is a liar and a thief, but he did not manipulate anyone inside this room." My mother frowned, her protective grip on Vanessa tightening. "What are you talking about?" Diane snapped, her patience wearing thin. "We just watched the video. He did this. He did the heavy lifting," I corrected her. "He carried the boxes. He drove the getaway car, but he did not act alone." Vanessa stiffened. Her fingers dug into my mother's arm. I saw the flash of genuine panic return to her eyes. She knew what was coming. She knew her husband was out in the driveway, singing like a bird to the state troopers, but she thought she could outsmart the police with her crying routine. She thought it would turn into a case of he said, she said. She forgot who she was dealing with. She forgot that I track digital footprints for a living. I reached out and closed the video player on my computer. I minimized the window, revealing my desktop background. Sitting right there in the center of the screen was a folder I had compiled while Marcus was sending over the dashcam files. It was a folder filled with high-resolution screenshots, Vanessa, I said, addressing my sister directly. "You really should have paid more attention when you borrowed my old desktop computer last Thanksgiving." Her face went completely rigid. The color drained from her cheeks for a second time, and this time the fear was entirely real. She took a step back, separating herself from our mother's embrace. I reached for the computer mouse. I had one more piece of evidence queued up and ready to go. Derek was already facing a judge for grand larceny, but I was about to drop a nuclear bomb on my sister's final performance. I was about to show my parents exactly who their golden child truly was. "Stop crying, Vanessa," I said loudly. My voice sliced right through the heavy, humid air of my living room. "You are not a victim." My mother snapped her head up. Her eyes flashed with defensive anger. She tightened her protective grip around her youngest daughter. "How dare you speak to her that way?" Diane scolded. "Your sister just discovered her husband is a criminal. Have some basic human decency, Aubrey." I did not flinch. I reached across the granite kitchen island and grabbed the edge of my laptop. I turned the device around so the high-definition screen faced the three of them. "I told you both earlier that I track hidden assets and expose corporate fraud for a living," I said. My tone remained flat and clinical. "I follow paper trails, but more importantly, I follow digital footprints. Liars always leave a digital footprint because they always believe they are smarter than everyone else in the room." I looked directly at Vanessa. Her fake tears had stalled again. Her chest stopped heaving. She stared at the silver casing of my computer like it was a loaded weapon. "You should have paid more attention when you borrowed my spare desktop computer last Thanksgiving," I told her. Vanessa swallowed hard. Her throat bobbed. She knew exactly what I was talking about. Last November, she came over to my apartment under the guise of sisterly bonding. In reality, she just wanted to use my dual-monitor setup to browse online bridal boutiques. She logged into her cloud account to access her saved bookmarks. When she finished her online shopping, she walked out the door and forgot to sign out. I never bothered to snoop through her private data. I simply ignored the active session and went about my life. But this morning, while I was sitting here waiting for Marcus to email me the delivery van footage, my brain started connecting loose threads. I reminded the room about the events of the wedding reception. I told my parents how I observed Derek sitting at the elevated head table during the salad course. While everyone else was giving toasts and clinking champagne glasses, the groom was furiously typing on his tablet computer. He was not writing vows. He was not checking the sports scores. He was coordinating a felony. Apple devices synchronize their data across all active platforms, I explained, keeping my words slow and deliberate so my parents could comprehend the gravity of the situation. Whatever Derek typed on his tablet was sent directly to Vanessa on her phone, and because her account was still authorized on my home network, every single one of those messages updated on my hard drive in real time. I grabbed my wireless mouse and clicked on the folder resting in the center of my desktop. A series of high-resolution screenshots popped open. They were image files of a text message conversation between the bride and the groom. The timestamps on the messages were from Saturday morning, just hours before they walked down the aisle to exchange their sacred vows. I did not ask my mother to read them. I knew she would try to find a way to twist the words or claim they were taken out of context. I decided to read the text logs out loud, forcing them to hear the undeniable truth in the quiet space of my home. "This first message is from your new son-in-law," I said, pointing at the blue bubble on the screen. "He sent this at 9 in the morning. It says the bookie wants the 30 grand by Monday. He is threatening to show up at my office. We have to do the vault grab tonight. There is no other option left." My father let out a ragged breath. He stepped closer to the island, his eyes scanning the bright screen to verify the text was real. I clicked to the next image. This was a gray bubble, a direct response from Vanessa. "And this is what your heartbroken, victimized daughter replied," I said. I read her exact typed words. She wrote, "Okay, fine, just make sure it looks like Aubrey took it. Tell the valet to make her park her silver car near the service doors. I will plant the seed during my dinner speech. I will make sure the catering staff thinks they saw her snooping around. We file the police report tomorrow, pay your guy off on Monday, and use the wedding insurance claim to put the down payment on the new house." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crack the floorboards. I looked at my mother. Diane was frozen in place. Her hands were still resting on Vanessa's shoulders, but her fingers slowly uncurled. She knew I started driving the final nail into the coffin of their golden child myth. She did not just know about the gambling debts, she co-authored the entire crime. She helped draft the blueprint. I let that reality sink into their minds. I watched my parents process the sheer, terrifying magnitude of the betrayal. This was not a bride turning a blind eye to a shady husband. This was a sister actively plotting to destroy her own sibling. Vanessa was willing to send me to a state penitentiary. I continued my voice, gaining a sharp, unforgiving edge. She was willing to let me face felony grand larceny charges. She was willing to let me lose my accounting license, my career, and my freedom. And why? She did it to secure a down payment on a piece of suburban real estate and to cover the debts of a degenerate gambler she married for social status. My father physically stumbled backward. He looked like he had been struck in the chest with a heavy wooden bat. His shoulders slumped forward. He reached out and grabbed the edge of the kitchen counter just to keep his balance. His knuckles turned stark white.
Thomas Martin had spent his entire life avoiding conflict. He looked the other way every single time Vanessa bullied me, stole from me, or manipulated our household. He thought his silence was harmless. Now, his silence had culminated in his youngest daughter becoming a calculating criminal mastermind. The shame radiating from him was palpable. He could not even lift his head to look at me. My mother reacted differently. The fierce, protective maternal instinct that had driven her to march into my apartment alongside the police vanished. She looked at Vanessa. She looked at the daughter she had placed on a towering pedestal for nearly 3 decades. She saw the spoiled, entitled girl she had shielded from every consequence suddenly exposed as a ruthless fraud. Diane dropped Vanessa's arm. She pulled her hands back quickly, holding them against her own chest, as if touching her youngest child would burn her skin. She took 2 large steps away from the velvet sofa, putting physical distance between herself and the bride. Vanessa realized she had lost her human shield. The panic in her eyes escalated into raw terror. She reached a hand out toward our mother. "Mom," Vanessa whispered. Her voice shook. It was a pathetic, desperate sound. "Mom, please, you have to understand. I was scared. Derek told me we would lose everything." "Do not touch me," my mother hissed. The venom in her voice was startling. It was the exact same venom she normally reserved for me, now redirected at the true villain of the family. "You tried to send your sister to prison," Diane whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of shock and disgust. "You sat at my breakfast table this morning, drinking coffee, and you lied right to my face. You let me bring the state police to her home." "I did it for my future," Vanessa cried, dropping the innocent act entirely and leaning into selfish justification. "Aubrey has plenty of money. She could afford a good lawyer. She would have been fine. I needed that insurance payout to start my life. She always gets everything she wants. She has the career and the big apartment. It is not fair." Her twisted logic hung in the air, pathetic and hollow. She truly believed that my hard work justified her theft. She believed she was entitled to my ruin simply because she wanted a bigger house. I closed the laptop screen with a firm snap. The sound made all 3 of them jump. "You are right about one thing, Vanessa," I said calmly. "I do have a great career, and part of having a great career is knowing exactly how to report insurance fraud before a false claim can even be processed." The officers outside were busy arresting Derek for stealing the cash envelopes, but the conflict inside my living room was about to escalate far beyond a simple police interrogation. Vanessa thought the worst part of her day was losing her mother's support. She had no idea that while she was busy crying on the sofa, I had already prepared a digital package that would ensure she lost every single person in her life. Vanessa scrambled backward until her spine hit the living room wall. Her eyes were wild and frantic. She pointed a shaking finger at my closed laptop. "You hacked me!" she screamed. Her voice cracked, echoing sharply off the high ceiling. "You broke into my private account. That is a federal cybercrime. I am going to have you arrested." I crossed my arms and stared at her. I did not raise my voice to match her hysteria. "No," I replied calmly, "you left your account authorized on my personal device. You logged in on my network using my hardware, and you forgot to log out. There was no password breach. There was no hacking. It is perfectly legal discovery." My father stood frozen near the kitchen island. He looked like a man standing on a trap door, waiting for the lever to pull. My mother pressed her hands against her temples, trying to process the rapid collapse of her favorite child. I knew exactly what my parents were going to do next. I had watched them execute the exact same playbook for 3 decades. Whenever Vanessa failed a class, crashed a car, or ruined a family vacation, Diane and Thomas went into crisis management mode. They would draft a polite narrative. They would call the relatives and whisper about a sudden misunderstanding. They would claim Vanessa was dealing with private health issues or stress. They would demand our extended family respect her privacy. They would sweep the ugly truth right under the expensive living room rug, lock the doors, and pretend the golden child remained pure and untouchable. I refused to let them bury this felony. I refused to let them twist the narrative to protect a thief. I decided to burn the bridge and salt the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. You see, I continued taking a slow step toward my sister. While you were busy crying on my sofa and trying to convince the state troopers to search my apartment, I was not just sitting here, waiting for my turn to speak. I was typing. Vanessa stopped breathing. Her chest froze.
"What did you do?" she whispered. "I drafted a very detailed email," I explained. "I attached the high-definition dashcam video from the delivery driver. I attached the public financial records showing Derek owes $45,000 to offshore bookies. And I attached the high-resolution screenshots of your text messages planning the vault grab to frame me." My mother let out a small, wounded gasp. "Aubrey, what did you do with those files?" I looked Diane right in the eyes. "I sent them to the wedding insurance adjusters." The air left the room. Vanessa leaned heavily against the drywall, her knees giving out slightly. She knew exactly what that meant. The insurance company held the policy for her luxury reception. By reporting the $30,000 stolen, she planned to file a lucrative claim and collect a clean check to buy a suburban house. Sending that evidence directly to the claims department did not just ruin her payday. It alerted a corporate fraud division. The adjusters would immediately flag her policy, deny the payout, and file their own civil charges for attempted insurance fraud. Her financial future was instantly reduced to ash. "But I did not stop there," I said. My voice grew colder, sharper. "Because stopping there would allow you to lie to everyone else. You would tell Aunt Susan that the insurance company made a clerical error. You would tell Uncle Dave that the venue lost the gifts. You would spin a new web of lies to protect your brand." My father finally found his voice. His tone was weak and raspy. "Aubrey, please tell me you kept this inside the family." "I did keep it inside the family," I replied. "I kept it inside the entire family. I pasted the guest list into the blind copy line of that email. I sent those attachments to every single aunt, uncle, cousin, and family friend who attended your reception. All 150 guests. Everyone who wrote a check, everyone who stuffed a $100 bill into a card, everyone who watched you mock me during your dinner toast." I hit send the exact second Trooper Hayes walked out the front door, I said. As if on cue, the silence in my apartment shattered. It started with my father. His cell phone emitted a loud, sharp ringtone from his jacket pocket. A second later, my mother's purse started buzzing aggressively against the hardwood floor. Then Vanessa's phone chimed from inside her designer tracksuit. The digital cacophony filled the room. The phones rang, buzzed, and chimed in a relentless, overlapping rhythm. It was the sound of 150 people opening an email, watching a groom load stolen gifts into a trunk, and reading a bride plot a felony frame job against her own sister. My father slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He stared at the glowing screen, his face twisted in agony. "It is your brother Dave Thomas," whispered to my mother. Uncle Dave was a retired municipal judge. He lived on a strict pension and hated liars more than anything in the world. He had gifted the newlyweds a generous $1,000 check, funds he had carefully saved for months. Discovering his niece orchestrated a heist to funnel his hard-earned money to an illegal bookmaker was going to unleash a biblical level of fury. Thomas did not answer the call. He let it ring. But the moment the screen went dark, it instantly lit up again. This time, it was Cousin Sarah, then Aunt Martha, then Derek's parents. My mother dropped to her knees on my living room floor. She scrambled to open her leather purse, digging through the contents until she found her ringing phone. She stared at the incoming caller IDs like they were venomous snakes ready to strike. Her carefully curated, pristine image was dead. Diane spent 30 years building Vanessa up as the ultimate success story. She funded expensive ballet recitals, bought tailored prom dresses, and bragged at endless country club luncheons about her beautiful, charismatic youngest daughter. She sacrificed my emotional well-being to ensure Vanessa always shined the brightest. Now the spotlight was shining on a criminal conspiracy. The public exposure was absolute. Every single person in their social circle now knew the Golden Bride was a common thief who tried to send her innocent sister to a jail cell. There was no hiding from the 200 witnesses. There was no public relations spin strong enough to fix a time-stamped video of a groom robbing his own wedding. Vanessa covered her ears with her hands, trying to block out the relentless chiming and buzzing echoing around her. She slid down the drywall until she hit the floor, pulling her knees up to her chest. She looked small, pathetic, and entirely broken. I stood in the center of my kitchen, listening to the phones ring. I felt a heavy, suffocating weight lift off my shoulders, a weight I had carried since childhood. I spent my life shrinking to make room for my sister's ego. I spent years biting my tongue while my parents treated me like an inconvenience. I accepted the role of the invisible workhorse. Not anymore. This was the ultimate justice. The truth was out, raw and unforgiving, spreading through the family tree like a wildfire. But the scorched earth tactic was only the beginning of their nightmare. Because while my parents were busy ignoring the angry phone calls from our relatives, the front door of my apartment swung open again. Trooper Hayes stepped back inside the entryway. His partner followed close behind. They had finished taking Derek's confession in the driveway, and judging by the grim, hardened expressions on their faces, they were not returning to ask polite questions. They were returning to deal with the co-conspirator crying on my living room floor. Trooper Hayes stepped through the threshold of my apartment. The heavy wooden door clicked shut behind him. His partner remained outside on the front lawn, securing Derek inside the back of a squad car. The atmosphere in my living room shifted instantly. The ringing cell phones finally stopped, leaving a heavy, suffocating silence in their wake. My mother remained frozen near the kitchen island. My father stared at the hardwood floor, utterly defeated. Vanessa was still sitting on the ground, hugging her knees to her chest. She looked up at the officer. Her designer tracksuit was wrinkled and covered in lint from the floorboards. Her perfect bridal makeup was smeared across her cheeks in dark, messy streaks. She looked nothing like the radiant woman who commanded a ballroom just hours prior. "Stand up, ma'am," Trooper Hayes ordered. His voice held no sympathy. It was the firm, authoritative tone of a man who dealt with criminals every single day. Vanessa trembled. She placed her hands flat against the drywall and pushed herself up to a standing position. She looked toward our mother, silently begging for an intervention. Diane turned her head away. She refused to meet her youngest daughter's gaze. The ultimate enabler had finally abandoned her post. "We have your husband in custody for grand larceny," the trooper stated. "He provided a full confession regarding the stolen cash. He also provided a sworn statement implicating you in the planning and execution of a fraudulent scheme." Vanessa gasped, clutching her chest. "He is lying!" she shrieked, her voice cracking under the strain. "I had nothing to do with it. You saw the text messages Aubrey showed you. I was just trying to protect him." Trooper Hayes pulled a pair of steel handcuffs from his tactical belt. The metal links clinked together, a sharp and terrifying sound. "Based on the digital evidence provided to us today," he continued, ignoring her pathetic defense, "we are bringing you down to the station. You are officially a person of interest in a conspiracy to commit insurance fraud and filing a false police report." My father finally moved. He took a weak step forward, raising a trembling hand. "Officer, please," Thomas whispered. "Is there any way we can handle this privately? She is a newlywed. This will destroy her future." Even now, facing undeniable proof of a felony, my father tried to find a cowardly exit. He wanted to shield his family name from the public record. "The state does not handle felonies privately," Sir Hayes replied, his gaze locking onto my father with thinly veiled disgust. He stepped toward Vanessa, grabbed her wrists, and snapped the cold steel cuffs into place. Vanessa let out a guttural sob. The reality of her situation crashed down upon her. She was not going to a luxury resort in the Maldives for her honeymoon. She was going to a concrete holding cell in downtown Boston. The officer escorted her out of my apartment. I followed them to the front window and pulled back the curtain. The morning sun illuminated the entire neighborhood. Several of my neighbors had stepped out onto their front porches holding their coffee mugs, watching the spectacle unfold. They watched a weeping bride wearing expensive leisure wear being shoved into the back of a marked police cruiser. The flashing red and blue lights reflected off the surrounding houses. The squad car pulled away from the curb, carrying the golden child toward a very dark reality. Over the next 3 weeks, the fallout was swift and merciless. The American justice system works incredibly fast when the prosecution possesses a high-definition video and time-stamped text messages. Derek sat in the county jail. He could not afford bail because his bank accounts were frozen and his credit was obliterated. Facing a potential 10-year prison sentence, his corporate arrogance vanished. He hired a cheap public defender and begged the district attorney for a plea deal. The prosecution offered him a reduced sentence in exchange for his full cooperation. Derek accepted the deal without hesitation. He threw his brand new wife straight under the bus. He provided hours of recorded testimony detailing how the theft and the frame job were entirely Vanessa's ideas. He painted her as the greedy mastermind who orchestrated the heist to buy suburban real estate. There is truly no honor among thieves. The legal disaster triggered a massive financial collapse. The wedding insurance company received my email on a Monday morning. Their corporate fraud division stepped in immediately. They denied the $30,000 claim before the paperwork was even fully processed. Furthermore, their legal department filed severe civil charges against Vanessa for attempted insurance fraud. The corporate lawyers demanded punitive damages and reimbursement for their investigative costs. Her legal bills began mounting at a terrifying pace. She required a criminal defense attorney for the state charges and a civil litigator for the insurance lawsuit. Vanessa's professional life crumbled just as fast. She worked as an account manager for a boutique bridal public relations firm. She planned luxury events and managed social media campaigns for wealthy couples. The partners at her firm opened their inboxes that same Monday and found my forwarded email. They saw the video of her husband robbing a venue. They read the text messages where she conspired to frame her own sibling. In the bridal industry, reputation is everything. A public relations manager cannot function when her own name is associated with grand larceny. The firm terminated her employment contract by noon. They cited a strict morality clause and ordered her to clear out her desk. Her prestigious clients canceled their accounts. She transformed into a toxic liability overnight. The social exile was even more devastating. Vanessa valued her social circle above her own blood relatives. She craved the admiration of her wealthy friends, her bridesmaids, and the country club elite. After the blind-copied email spread through our extended family, the gossip traveled like a wildfire. Her friends abandoned her. The bridesmaids who stood beside her at the altar blocked her phone number. They deleted every single wedding photo from their social media pages, desperate to distance themselves from a known criminal. The people she cared about most treated her like a highly contagious disease. When she walked into a local coffee shop, former classmates would literally turn their backs and walk out the door. With no income, mounting legal debts, and a husband locked inside a state penitentiary, Vanessa lost her luxury apartment. She had no savings. She packed her remaining designer clothes into cheap black garbage bags. She was forced to move back into my parents' house, taking up residence in their dark, unfinished basement. From the confines of that damp room, she filed for divorce, ending a marriage to a man she had only chosen for his fake image of wealth. My parents suffered the ultimate social death. They built their entire lives around maintaining flawless appearances. They believed their worth was tied to how their neighbors perceived their success. Now that carefully constructed illusion was reduced to rubble. The humiliation was inescapable. When Sunday rolled around, my mother put on her best floral dress and drove to her local church. As she walked down the central aisle, the congregation went dead silent. The elderly women in the front pews turned their heads, refusing to offer their usual warm greetings. The pastor offered a sermon on the dangers of greed and deception, looking directly at my parents the entire time. They left before the final hymn finished playing. The country club was worse. The membership committee sent my father a polite but firm letter requesting he take a voluntary leave of absence. They claimed the ongoing criminal investigation was causing distress among the other members. Thomas Martin, a man who prided himself on his golf handicap and his networking skills, was exiled from his only sanctuary. My parents were trapped. They were confined to a silent, depressing house with the monster they had enabled and coddled for nearly 3 decades. They spent their days avoiding phone calls from angry relatives demanding their stolen gift money back. They spent their nights listening to Vanessa cry in the basement, mourning the loss of her superficial life. They reaped the exact harvest they had sown. While their world burned to the ground, I experienced a profound sense of peace. I sat comfortably in my quiet, secure Boston apartment. I woke up every morning, brewed my black coffee, and went to a job where my skills were valued and respected. My firm promoted me to a lead director position, citing my exceptional ability to handle high-pressure investigations. I slept soundly every single night, completely unbothered by the chaos unfolding in the suburbs. I had excised the toxic tumor from my life. I was free, or so I thought. Because 2 months after the wedding disaster, the dust finally settled. The criminal charges were pending, the divorce was finalized, and the winter snow began to fall. I was enjoying a quiet Saturday afternoon, reading a novel near my living room window, when a sudden, unexpected sound broke the silence. My doorbell rang. I set my book down and walked toward the entryway. I did not expect any deliveries. I looked through the glass peephole. Standing on my front porch, looking old and exhausted and thoroughly defeated, were the two people I had successfully banished from my life. It was time to set the final boundary. 2 months had passed since the flashing red and blue police lights faded from my quiet street. December arrived in Massachusetts, bringing freezing temperatures, biting winds, and early sunsets that painted the city skyline in shades of bruised purple. Inside my Boston apartment, the air was warm, smelling of roasted coffee beans and fresh linens. My life over those 8 weeks transformed into a sanctuary of undeniable peace. Without the constant weight of my family dragging me down, my career flourished. The senior partners at my accounting firm promoted me to a director role, praising my sharp focus and unyielding dedication. My weekends were no longer hijacked by frantic phone calls demanding financial favors or emotional labor. For the first time in 31 years, the silence in my home felt like a comforting embrace rather than a lonely void. I built a life that belonged solely to me, free from the toxic demands of a sister who viewed me as a human bank account and parents who viewed me as a convenient scapegoat. It was a Saturday afternoon. I sat on my velvet sofa, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, reading a financial thriller novel. The winter sun streamed through the large glass windows, warming the hardwood floor. Then the doorbell chimed. The sudden noise pierced the quiet atmosphere. I set my book down on the coffee table. I was not expecting any packages, and the building concierge usually called up before allowing guests onto my floor. I walked down the hallway toward the entryway. I leaned forward and peered through the glass peephole, expecting to see a lost delivery driver or a neighbor holding a misdelivered piece of mail. I did not see a stranger. I saw Thomas and Diane Martin. My parents stood on my front porch. They looked entirely unrecognizable from the arrogant, demanding couple who had marched into my home 2 months prior. The pristine, untouchable posture they always carried had vanished, replaced by the heavy, slumping weight of public disgrace. My father looked 10 years older. His hair, usually dyed a crisp dark brown, showed thick streaks of unkempt gray. His shoulders sagged underneath a faded winter coat. He kept his hands shoved deep into his pockets, shifting his weight nervously from side to side. He looked exhausted, thoroughly defeated by the reality of his ruined social standing. My mother stood right beside him. Diane wore a heavy wool scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. Her face lacked its usual flawless makeup. Dark circles bruised the fragile skin beneath her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly in the frigid air. She held a white cardboard bakery box tied securely with a piece of red string. I recognized the printed logo instantly. It was a local bakery located near our old suburban neighborhood. They baked a specific cherry pie I loved when I was 9 years old. Diane had not purchased that pie for me in over 2 decades. Now she was holding it against her chest like a desperate peace offering, hoping sugar and baked crust could somehow erase a felony frame job. I unlocked the primary wooden door and pulled it open, but I left the heavy metal screen door firmly shut and locked between us. I did not invite them out of the cold. I stood in my warm hallway, crossed my arms over my chest, and waited for them to speak. My father swallowed hard. He looked at my face, searching my expression for a trace of the obedient, eager-to-please daughter he used to ignore. Aubrey Thomas said, his voice cracked mid-sentence. The sound was weak, raspy, and stripped of all paternal authority. "We are so sorry." I stared at him through the metal mesh of the screen door. The apology hung in the freezing air, hovering between us like a ghost. It was a sentence I had spent my entire childhood praying to hear. I used to lie awake at night in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had to do to earn their remorse. I thought if I earned better grades, secured a higher-paying job, or made less noise, they would finally see my value. Hearing those exact words now felt like receiving a check from a closed bank account. The currency was worthless. The time for apologies had passed long ago. "We were blinded by her," my father continued, stepping closer to the screen. His fingers gripped the metal doorframe.
We did not see what she was doing behind the scenes. She manipulated us just like she manipulated Derek. We want to make this right, Aubrey. We want our family back.
Diane stepped forward, lifting the bakery box slightly.
We brought your favorite, she whispered. Her voice trembled, lacking the sharp, commanding edge she used to wield like a weapon. We just want to come inside, sit down and talk. We miss you so much.
I looked at the cherry pie. Then I lifted my gaze and looked at the two people standing on my welcome mat. These were the exact same individuals who stood in my living room and actively volunteered to send me to a state penitentiary. They looked a police officer in the eye and lied to secure their golden child's narrative. They were willing to sacrifice my freedom, my accounting license, and my future to protect their suburban illusion. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to shout to inflict damage. The truth carries its own devastating weight. Apologies expire, I told them. My voice remains steady, cold, and unforgiving. But boundaries do not. My father flinched as if I had struck him across the face. My mother slowly lowered the bakery box, realizing her cheap nostalgic trick was failing.
You do not miss me, I said, looking Diane straight in the eyes. You miss having an audience. You miss having a daughter you can brag about at your Sunday church services and your country club luncheons. I watched her breath hitch in the cold air. I dismantled their true motives, laying their selfish psychology bare for everyone to see.
Vanessa is a disgraced felon living in your basement, I continued, my words striking like precise hammer blows. Her husband is locked in a county jail cell. Your friends will not return your phone calls. Your social circle exiled you the moment they saw the video of your son-in-law robbing the venue. You came here today because I am the only successful, untainted thing you have left to claim. Thomas closed his eyes, unable to bear the weight of my accusations. You want to use my career and my stability to repair your shattered public image, I stated. You want to pretend we are a happy, healed family so you can show your faces in your neighborhood again. You spent my entire life treating me like a backup generator. You kept me in the dark, ignored my existence, and only came looking for me when your main power source failed. The harsh reality of my words struck my mother hard. Her lower lip began to quiver, tears welled up in her tired eyes, spilling over her eyelashes and freezing against her pale cheeks. These were not the fake theatrical tears Vanessa used to control a room. These were genuine tears born from profound regret. They were the bitter tears of a woman who finally realized she had backed the wrong daughter for 30 years. Diane traded her loyal, hardworking child for a toxic fraud, and now she was reaping the barren harvest of that terrible investment. I am not your safety net, I told them, sealing the boundary forever. I am not your redemption story. You chose your golden child. Now you get to live with her. My father reached out, pressing his open palm against the metal screen. Aubrey, please, he begged. Do not do this. You are not welcome here, I said. I did not blink. I did not waver. Do not call my phone. Do not visit this address again. If you show up on my porch one more time, I will call the police and file a trespassing order. I did not wait for their response. I grabbed the edge of the solid wood door. I looked at my parents one last time, taking in the sight of their broken pride. I closed the door firmly in their faces. I reached up and turned the heavy brass deadbolt. The sharp metallic click echoed down the hallway, signaling the permanent end of our relationship. I turned my back to the entryway. I walked away from the door, leaving them standing out in the freezing winter cold. I walked into my kitchen. The afternoon sunlight poured across the granite island. I reached for my glass coffee pot and poured a fresh cup of dark roast. The warm ceramic mug felt solid and grounding in my hands. I walked over to the large window overlooking the bustling Boston streets below. I took a slow sip of the bitter coffee and let out a long, quiet breath. A genuine smile spread across my face. I did not feel angry. I did not feel sad. I felt a profound, untouchable sense of peace settle over my soul. For 31 years, I thought I needed their love to feel complete. I thought I needed their validation to prove I was worthy of taking up space in the world. I was wrong. I did not need their love anymore. I had the truth. I had my independence. And for the first time in my entire life, I was entirely free.